Musa?
Mine is drawing a blink right now.
Okay, so Rawd al-Talibin, this is a mukhtasar and a tweak of Sharh al-Kabir by Rafi'i. Okay, Sharh al-Kabir by Rafi'i, which is a commentary on the wajiz of Imam Ghazali, which is a, a summary of the Wasit, which is a summary of the Basit, which is basically a tweak of Imam al-Haramain's commentary on Mukhtasar al-Muzani. So the wajiz goes back to Mukhtasar al-Muzani, essentially. Mukhtasar al-Muzani, right? So anyway, these three books, the Tanbih, the Minhaj, and the Hawi Saghir, they're not the same. So the genealogy of the Minhaj is not the same as the genealogy of the Hawi. So it is actually quite useful, right? It is actually quite so when you have like the normal curriculum, which is kind of like the Minhaj and the Shuruh al-Minhaj and the Mukhtasarat al-Minhaj and everything going around the Minhaj, that's great. But it is actually useful as a tool to look at these other ones as well, right? It's quite useful. So the reliance is a bit like that. I really didn't like teaching the reliance, um, and I don't like teaching reliance. I don't know why. Sometimes books just don't resonate with people. But like one of the reasons was A, it was in English, and B, because it doesn't follow the minhaj. So when you're teaching Fath al-Mu'in, you get stuck, you can go to the minhaj and the commentaries on the Hajj and the Hawaj on the Hajj. You can't always do that with the reliance. So sometimes with reliance, I'd have to go back to things that are like that go to this lineage. So, for example, might go to Asnan Matalib by Zakaria Ansari, which is a commentary on the Rawd, right? Again of Ibn Muqri. So it's kind of like that lineage. So different kind of lineage. So sometimes different masail, and it's useful, right? Because people we're not the way that people organically organize discussions is different. And then we also have Lubab, right? That's also different. Right? Lubab is not really on the level of these three, right? But it's interesting. So I think if you look at what we're doing in the Lubab, it's slightly different to the Minhaj. It's slightly different to like the way they're organized, slightly different. So this is useful mainly because of Hashish Sharqawi, but other things as well. But these other three ones, these are important, right? So I know like with the Hawi Saghir, I think Sheikh Amjad Rashid, he spent like a long time on that, like going through the Fath al-Jawad of Ibn Hajar with his teacher in Yemen for a long time. He was like, so uh it's quite important and it's referenced a lot. Even so in the Tuhfa, etc., they'll keep referring to say elsewhere he says this, elsewhere he says this, right? وقال في شرحي الإرشاد in his two commentaries on the Irshad, right? Which are so the Irshad is a mukhtasar or a tweak of the Hawiya Saghir, right? And that goes back to Rawda, which goes back to this. It has that different lineage, right? There are other books like the Talkhis of Ibn Qas that's really, really early, but that kind of died out. Yeah. And the Wajiz, like I wouldn't, the Wajiz of Imam Ghazali, would I necessarily study it? I don't know. Not really. But these three books, the Hawi Saghir, in its the way that we interact with it is the Irshad and Ibn Hajar's commentary on it, uh, and then also of the same lineage is Al-Ubab, right? So there's this book Al-I'ab, which is frequently referenced. Excuse me, Al-I'ab, right? Al-I'ab, which is a commentary on Al-Ubab, which I think goes back to the Rawda, really. So Al-I'ab by Ibn Hajar. This book is not in print, and it's referenced a lot. They'll say, oh, and Ibn Hajar says in the I'ab this, and we don't have it. It's not in print. The Ubab has been printed, right? Al-Ubab with an Ain, Al-Ubab. It has been printed, and it is useful, right? Um, so that's also a kind of a book to see, but that's not really a study book. You don't study Al-I'ab, right? Allahu A'lam. Khair. We don't want to go too much into the whole story of these things. We just want to get into it. So inshallah, we're going to be doing the first hour. We'll be looking at the Tanbih, and then in the second hour, we'll be looking at the other two books, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? Okay. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Wassalatu Wassalam على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So I don't want to go on to too much, but it says here, so he's basically a 5th century scholar. صحب القاضي أبو الطيب الطبري كثير وانتفع به وناب عنه في مجلسه ورتبه معيدا في حلقته وصار إمام وقته ببغداد في بغداد. ولما بنى نظام الملك مدرسته ببغداد سأله أن يتولاه فلم يفعل فولاها لأبي نصر ابن صباغ صاحب الشامل بمدة يسيرة ثم أجاب إلى ذلك فتولاها. So basically نظام الملك, so I believe this نظام الملك is what's his name is Seljuk. Someone double check with me. Pretty sure Nizam Mulk is Seljuk. They basically created this university, and Shirazi was teaching that university, right? So some people, Orientalists and Salafis, will say the only reason why people follow the former Dhahib is because the government came involved and stopped people thinking, right? To some extent, there's some truth in it, right? In that the government likes stability, and the government, there were certain times where there was like, yeah, government funding, right? So like, oh, you're Shafi, Ashari, yeah, go ahead and teach. There's a university for you, basically, right? To some extent, that's not really how it is, but to some extent, that happens now and then. وقد صنف التصانيف المباركة المفيدة منها المهذب في المذهب المهذب. So مهذب, that's the مجموع is a commentary on the مهذب. That's really big, right? بالمذهب والتنبيه في الفقه واللمع, right? So these are actually two different books. اللمع وشرح اللمع, they're not actually the same book. Okay? So they seem like, oh, one's a commentary on the other. It's not. It's like a commentary. It's kind of it's kind of a maybe like a commentary on a different draft of the book, something like that. It's not actually. So the Lum'a that we're going to be looking at is not the book that he did a commentary on, right? والنكت في الخلاف والتبصرة والمعونة والتلخيص في الجدل وغير ذلك. So he's an أصولي فقيه متكلم, right? And he's also one of the great so he says so he says ولد في سنة 93 و300 بفيروزاباد, right? So in note, many of these abads with a dal are actually originally with a dal. Baghdad. We say Baghdad, but I think it's originally Baghdad. Okay? So Fairuzabad we say today, but Fairuzabad. Okay? So it seems like in Farsi, in Persian, they originally had sounds like the, but that the disappeared over time. Right? Like so in Arabic we have a word khirbid, right? Khirbid, that which is watermelon. In Farsi they say kharbuza. So it was probably originally khirbid, right? If there was a zay and it was a zay in Farsi, why would it come into Arabic as a dhal? You know what I'm saying? So it was so they probably had these sounds. So I think this things like that, like it's Baghdad and not Baghdad. Um, so he's born in basically in the end of the 4th century. وتوفي ليلة الأحد ليلة الأحد الحادي والعشرين من جماد الآخرة. He ended in في سنة 70 و400, so 5th century, right? 470. And he was a very, very righteous man. Um, and it's an important thing. So number one, basically, he's a university lecturer. Basically, he's part of this established university thing. I also mentioned something else that's important. Doesn't mention it here. But anyway, key thing is in his time, he and other ulama gathered together and protested against the government and said, close the brothels. So what was happening at his time? So we're here we're talking almost 1,000 years ago, right? Basically 1,000 years ago. You're in Baghdad 1,000 years ago, and these are ulama are going to the government and saying, close the brothels. So what's happening? What's happening in society,
Corruption.
right? You're living in a time, right, of fasad. So the idea that they were like this because they lived in a place like this, that doesn't exist. Utopia doesn't exist, right? Utopia doesn't exist. Oh, he was from Muslim Spain. Muslim Spain was like that. Not necessarily, right? There's times of it's instability, political instability, financial instability, huge facade, corruption everywhere, right? So the idea like, oh, because I don't live in utopia, I can't do this. They didn't live in utopia either. They didn't live in utopia either. Crazy things happening, insane things happening, right? So it's really important to understand that. Like throw that whole idea out of your head. There was a time where, oh yeah, it was easier to raise kids back then. Yeah, yes and no, right? Like, there's problems today and problems in the past, right? Are my kids safe? Your kids are safer in some way. Your kids are not safe in other ways, right? So imagine, for example, it's just a normal thing for your kids to walk 2 hours to school and 2 hours back, right? And you're always wondering, are they going to be safe or not? Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? Right? In some ways, it's easier to do the haram back then than it was now because less communication, right? In some ways, it's easier to do the haram now than it was back then. There's all sorts of different things. So the idea that so there's number one, there's nothing new under the sun. It's the same dunya. It just has different colors, right? It's different face, but it's the same thing, right? Fitna always there, haram is always there. People do the same stupid things all the time. Same kind of things happen. And it's وكان في غاية من الورع والتشدد في الدين, right? ومحاسنه أكثر من أن تحصر. Right? You couldn't list everything about him, right? Because a genuine wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here it says Ibn Najjar of he says إمام أصحاب الشافعي من انتشر فضله في بلاد وفاق أهل زمانه بالعلم والزهد وأكثر علماء الأمصار من تلامذته, right? And here it mentions he studied fiqh with Baydawi. This is not the Baydawi that we're talking about. Baydawi is after him. Baydawi is like in the 6th century. You say Baydawi. This is another Baydawi, an earlier Baydawi. Um, okay, khair. So then, where are we? So he says, Alhamdu Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi, حق حمده وصلاته على سيدنا محمد. Where are we? خير خلقه وعلى آله وصحبه. هذا كتاب مختصر في أصول مذهب الشافعي. أصول meaning the main discussions, right? As again we mentioned, what is the point of a matan? The point of a matan is tadarruj. How am I supposed to download this law, all this information? So I need to get to the main mabahith, right? That's what the ulama say. Man حفظ المتون حاز العلوم. You have the mutun in your head. Here are the main discussions in fiqh. Here are the main things that come up, right? But he said woman حفظ الحواشي ما حواشي. If you memorize the hawashi, I'm going to memorize the majmu'. Somebody actually said that, like, oh yeah, the sheikh is teaching the majmu'. Like, how can you teach the majmu'? How can you even read the majmu'? Right? How long would it take to sit down and just read 28 volumes, right? Aloud. Like, it would just take forever. So that's not a useful way of doing things. The download speed is inefficient. So we're trying to find efficient ways to download things. Right? إذا قرأه المبتدئ أو المبتدئ وتصوره تنبه به على أكثر المسائل، وإذا نظر فيه منتهي تذكر به جميع الحوادث. Right? إن شاء الله تعالى، وبه التوفيق، وهو حسبي ونعم الوكيل، وإياه أسأل أن ينفع به، إنه قريب مجيب. Okay. Okay. So it says كتاب الطهارة. So it says قال الله تعالى وأنزلنا من السماء ماء طهورا ولا يجوز. I'm not going to comment much because all of us are familiar with these masail, right? So we're just going to go through as fast as we can. And later on, it's going to get a bit more harder because he's going to mention different positions that are less common in the early mutun. It says ولا يجوز رفع حدث ولا إزالة نجس إلا بالماء المطلق وهو ما نزل من السماء أو نبع من الأرض على أي صفة كان من أصل الخلقة. وتكره الطهارة بماء قصد إلى تشميسه، وإذا تغير الماء بمخالط طاهر يستغني الماء عنه كالزعفران والأشنان لم تجوز الطهارة به because it's not considered right water anymore. Right, so it says يستغني الماء عنه, something that's avoidable. Right, so stop me if something's unclear. I'm not going to explain very much. وإن تغير بما لا يختلط به كالدهن والعود, so the oil doesn't mix, right? The stick doesn't mix. So this is called مجاور as opposed to مخالط. جازت الطهر به في أحد القولين. Right, so there's two positions here. When he says قولين, it's not clear. Is he saying وجهين or قولين? It's not actually very clear most of the time. Right, so it's changed because of oil. Do we say that it's mixed or not? Because it's لم يختلط, right? And the relied upon position is it doesn't matter. So oil, it changes smell because of oil, because of a stick next to it, doesn't matter. وإن وقع في ماء دون القلتين نجاسة لا يدركها الطرف, right? الطرف, the edge, الطرف, the eye. لم تنجسه وقيل تنجسه, right? Because it's there. وقيل فيه قولان. Right? So whether you can notice it or not, there's two positions there. وإن كان مما يدركه الطرف فإن كانت ميتة إن كانت هي ميتة لا نفس لها سائلة لم تنجسه في أحد القولين وهو الأصلح للناس. Right? So there's two positions here. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Right? And the relied upon position is it does not, because of umul balwa and because of the hadith about the fly going in the bottom in the cup. وهو الأصلح للناس. So I used to ask, I didn't used to ask, I remember asking Sheikh Abdul Karim Yahya, I said, look, in the Tanbih, if you teach us in Tareem, like, how do you deal with it? You mentioned this position, like, he said, Sa'at al-Ilm, right? Like, there's just more than one opinion, that's just how it is, you know? That's how they used to deal with it. وهو الأصلح للناس. وتنجسه في الآخر وهو القياس, which is what meaning قياس is the default, right? Here is a fly, the fly is dead. If it's dead, it's najas. There's najas in the water. خلاص. Right? وإن كان غير ذلك من النجاسات نجسه. Right? So something that is something that A is avoidable, or B, not a small little animal that doesn't have blood, like a fly, like a, I don't know, scorpion or something like that. نجسه makes it najas. وإن كان الماء قلتين ولم يتغير فهو طاهر, i.e. najasa goes in it and it doesn't change, فهو طاهر. وإن تغير فهو نجس. Najas, filth. Najis, filthy, right? فهو نجس, right? So a jacuzzi, the cat dies in the jacuzzi, there's red stuff in it, or the blood, the cat, the smells of a dead body. and it's filthy. وإن زال التغير بنفسه أو بماء طهورا وإن زال بالتراب ففيه قولان. So you've covered the smell with chlorine, you've covered the smell with earth, you've covered the color with earth. فيه قولان أصحها أنه يطهر. Right? So you covered it, زال بالتراب, by covering it. So it says أصحها أنه يطهر. Is that correct? That is not correct. Right? The correct position is no, it does not become pure because you've just simply covered it. Right? Everyone's following? So this is incorrect here. Right? Somebody looks, if you look in the, somebody can try and find the PDF. I don't know if the PDF exists of Najib al-Thaqib. You should see that correction there. Okay, everyone's following?
Yes.
Muhammad, Musa, Jawad.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going
Yes.
fast. You need to stop me if it's not clear. Okay. وقال في القديم إن كان الماء جاريا لم ينجسه إلا بالتغير. Okay, so the qadim is if the water is flowing. So flowing, then it doesn't become filthy. Right? So in the jadid, we say, hang on a minute. Flowing water, how does it work? We say it's the same as anything else. If it's a river, obviously it's more than qullatain. If it's a stream and it comes in little spurts, right? There's this little, really tiny stream that is literally like an inch across. If it's coming in little spurts, I'm going to do each jariyah is going to have its own hukam. So it's like it goes in little spurts and it's like really like an inch across, right? And then each jariyah has its own thing. So if I can look at this spurt of water, this gush of water, is that qullatain? Yes. Okay, in which case it will not become filthy unless it changes. Right? That's how we okay. وما تطهر به, whatever is used for tahara من حدث فهو طاهر غير مطهر في أظهر القولين. Right? في أظهر القولين. So when he says الأظهر القولين, the ظاهر is that there's two positions in the jadid and they're strong. Right? And so when he says, so what does that mean then? هو طاهر غير مطهر في أظهر القولين. What is the other position? Right? Presumably the other position is فهو طاهر مطهر. Right? The other position is that if you use water, it remains purifying, as in the Maliki school. The Maliki school is that you use water for wudu. There's no such thing as ma' musta'bal in the Maliki school. It doesn't exist. So you can't use water. It's water and you use it to wash, and you can still use it to wash. But the correct position in the Shafi school is you cannot use water to wash yourself twice. You can't remove najasa with the same water twice, or purify yourself with the same water twice. Right? So that's presumably, right? So it's an important concept. Whenever you see something and it says وَفِيهِ قَوْلَيْن, it's not always obvious what the other qawl is, right? So he says وَمَا تُطُهِّرَ بِهِ مِنْ حَدَثٍ فَهُوَ طَاهِرْ غَيْرْ مُطَهِّرْ. So presumably the other position is فَهُوَ طَاهِرْ مُطَهِّرْ. Presumably. Maybe it's فَهُوَ najis. I don't know. Like, look in the Rawdah, I don't know what the other position is. فإن بلغ قلتين جاز الطهارة به وقيل لا تجوز. So you have a small body of used water and another small body of used water. You put them together and it becomes قلتين. Can you use it now? Yes, you can. وقيل
Yes.
لا تجوز. Right? وقيل لا تجوز. Right? Why? Because it's used. Right? But then how would that work then? You get the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean. And it all becomes used at some point. And how would that work, right? So to be a bit extreme, if you said it, we do by qiyas awlawi, right? If ma' mutanajjis plus ma' mutanajjis, right? When it reaches qullatayn, and there's no athar, then it's going to be pure, right? There was
Should be.
one bucket of water that was touched by blood, another bucket of water touched by urine, put all the buckets together, 10 buckets, all together comes to 300 liters. So then, khalas, as long as you can't see the blood or smell the urine or anything, it's fine, right? Just like the ocean. So by a fortiori, by a better right, this water was used and this water was used, right? The use, right? Use is less than the tanajjus, right? So presumably it should become pure, and that's the relied upon position. But he says there's another position that you cannot use it. Okay, great. Everyone's happy? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so it's babul aniyah. So aniyah on the pattern af'ila. Okay, af'ila, not on the pattern fa'ila. Okay, aniyah. So it's atniyah, right? Atniyah. Sorry, not atniyah. So aniyah is the plural of ina, and ina is the plural of something else. So ina like jawab, jawab ajwiba, ina aniyah. Okay, af'ila. Silah asliha. That's what it is. So ina silah, asliha aniyah. So it's atniyah, right? Atniyah. But there's another singular before that. I can't remember it. I might have it here on the side. Here we go. آنية جمع إناء كالسقاء وأسقية. وجمع الآنية أواني. Okay, so إناء is like silah. آنية like أسلحة. And then أسلحة, the plural of أسلحة should be أسالح and أواني. Okay, so it says تجوز الطهارة من كل إناء طاهر إلا ما اتخذ من ذهب أو فضة فإنه يحرم استعماله في الطهارة وغيرها, right? فإن تطهر منه صحت طهارته, right? So
I'm sorry, the ania is jama or mufrad?
is the plural is jama' of ina, so it means containers.
Yeah, that's what I'm understanding. But it says al-ania jama ina. Okay. No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Al-ania jama
جمع إناء
وجمع
كالسقاء
الآنية
وأسقية.
أواني.
وجمع الآنية
No, the
أواني.
other one.
So he says,
أواني.
well, you go ahead. Make sense,
I
Sam?
just trying to understand. Not quite. جمع الآنية أواني. I thought the آنية is jama itself.
جمع.
No, jama. Okay. Okay.
So here's
No,
one
no.
that'll drive you crazy, okay, Samih? So you're Dr. Samih, correct? This is Dr. Samih, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your doctor of what's your specialty?
Heart.
Heart surgeon. Okay, mashallah. Allah يشفي القلوب يا رب. Okay. So this will drive you crazy, okay? So you have thamara. Okay, thamara, a fruit.
Mhm.
جمعه ثمر.
Samara.
جمعه ثمر. موزة موز. So جمع ثمرة ثمر.
Mhm.
جمع ثمر ثمار.
Samarat. Okay.
So جمع ثمر ثمار. So now
What about Samarat?
1 second. Okay, well, that's slightly different. So
Okay.
ثمرات
I'm sorry.
means ثمرات is something slightly different. We'll see that in a second. So now I'm on to
Okay.
ثمر. Okay, so I get to ثمرة to ثمر. The جمع of ثمر is ثمار. Okay, what's the plural of kitab?
Kutub.
كتب. So the جمع of ثمار is ثمر. Okay,
Mhm.
what's the plural of ثلث?
Athlat.
أثلاث. So the جمع of ثمر is now أثمار. Sorry, we don't say أثمار. We say 1 second. We said so. We got ثمار. Where did we said ثمر, ثمر, ثمار, ثمر, أثمار.
Okay.
Is that right? That's right. So you got the plural of the plural of the plural. Right? It's kind of crazy, right? So so that's what's happening there. So now thamarat is different. So thamarat is like mozat. Like what's the difference between dajaj and dajajat, right? Or shajar and shajarat. So shajarat, so what does the ta marbuta do? The ta marbuta is for, they call it Orientalists, they call it an instantiation, an instance of something. So it's quite a good word they use, right? So if you think about it, like darb and darbah, and moz and mozah. So moz is like the concept. Mozah is an instance of it. Darb is the concept, jins al-darb. Darba is an instance of it. We call it masdar marra, right? An instance of it. So when you want an instance of it, you use the ta marbuta. So now when you're saying, for example, thamarat or mozat, right? Or tuffahat, right? Tuffahat is in a number of individual apples, right? As opposed to apples vis-a-vis they're composing the jins. So I
I
say,
see.
I'll look at التفاح like أنا أحب التفاح. أين التفاح؟ أنا اشتريت التفاح. أين التفاح? Like the apple concept that I bought and the apples that represent that concept. Right? So أنا لازم أنا عندي دجاج ما شاء الله أو أنا أطعمهم كذا. Like you have دجاج, like you have the jins of دجاج, or do you have دجاجات? Say, well, when I look at them as afrad, as individuals, they're dajajat, right? Or diyaka, right? But if I look at them as the normal thing is أنا عندي دجاجة ودجاجتين وما شاء الله صار عندي دجاج, right? So one instance, two instances. Now the instance has disappeared and has dissolved into the class. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
It's like the جمع الجنس versus جمع
exactly, right?
الفرد أو الأفراد.
So like sha'arat versus sha'ar, like so like sha'arat means independent hairs versus sha'ar, which is hair, right? أنا أحب البريطان versus أنا أحب هؤلاء البريطانيين الثلاث, right? So it's like independent. So بريطانيين versus البريطان. So البريطان, that's like اسم جنس جمعي, right? الروم, right? So there's الرومي, روميان, روميون, and then الروم, right? So that's the same kind of thing that's happening there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. جزاك خير.
Barak feek. But the real word is the gag, right? I'm joking. خير. So he says تجوز الطهارة. So now the issue is فإن تطهر منه أو تطهر الإنسان منه صحت طهارته. Okay, how? Who can explain that? So I just made wudu. I did a sinful wudu. I got my golden bowl and I made wudu for my golden bowl. Why is it valid? Same thing. I stole Dr. Samih's bowl. He has a plastic bowl or an iron bowl, and I stole it from him. And he said, "Give it back." And I said, "No." And he says, "I don't permit you to use my bowl." And I say, "I don't care. I'm making wudu." So while I'm making wudu, I'm sinning by using someone else's bowl without permission, or by using the golden bowl without Allah's permission. So how is it valid?
So
Is this
the wudu itself is pure is acceptable, but it's a sin,
Mhm.
right? I mean,
That is correct.
like yeah.
So we say هل يتصور انفكاك هذه المعصية عن الطهارة؟ نعم يتصور انفكاك هذه المعصية أو هذا الإثم أو هذا المنهي عنه عن العبادة أو عن المعاملة. فإذا صح. Okay? So that's what we have to do. As Shafi'is, we ask the question, is it conceivable that this thing that's prohibited exists outside of this contract or outside of this act of worship? If yes, then it is valid. If no, it's not valid. Right? So could I do this? Could I, for example, so notice how I can use the golden plate to eat my food, which is haram, and I can use my golden plate to make wudu, which is haram. So therefore, it's mere muqarana, right? It's just, all that's happened is these two things have coincided. The sin happened to coincide today with this act of worship, but tomorrow, when I use it to eat my food, it didn't coincide. So that's just happenstance, right? It's not related. Wudu is one thing, and using the gold as a tool is something else, and they just happen to coincide, right? As opposed to fasting on Eid. The sin of fasting on Eid, لا يتصور انفكاكه عن الصوم. Right? You can't do the sin of fasting on Eid outside of fasting. Doesn't exist. Right? So if it's conceivable inside the act of worship and outside that act of worship, inside that contract and outside that contract, then it's going to be valid and sinful. Otherwise, it's going to be invalid. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. A woman fasting without the permission of her husband. Right. Could she do the sin of rejecting him, right? Physically, outside of fasting?
Yes.
100% possible. She could walk out, she could refuse him, lock the door on him, she can do anything. So the same sin could be done in fasting or outside of fasting. Therefore, it's just muqarana, right? It's not what we call kharij lazim. Kharij lazim is it's kharij an haqiqatil it's kharij an haqiqatil aqd or haqiqatil ibadah, but it's lazim. أي لا يتصور انفكاكه عنه, right? It's not conceivable that it would be found in anything else. Right? So this is the question we're always going to ask. Like, look at Rise of Traveler, contracts that are sinful but valid, contracts that are sinful but invalid. The debate between sinful and valid and sinful and invalid is هل يتصور انفكاك المنهي عنه أم لا? Right? That's how we Shafis work, right? Hanbalis slightly different, Hanafis again slightly different. But for us and so the Malikis, for example, that Ibn Rushd mentions this in the Bidayat al-Mujtahid. He says, the position that you could pray with najasa on you. What's that based on? So they have an issue in the Maliki school. You prayed with najasa, right? Is it valid or is it not valid, right? And with conditions there. But he says, what is that based on? The based on issue is having najasa on you something that is sinful in prayer and outside of prayer, or is it something unique to prayer? If it's unique to prayer, the prayer will be invalid. But if it's not unique to prayer, then the prayer should be valid. Because we're telling you, Habibi, don't have najasa on you. And then when you pray, don't have najasa on you. So you said, oh, these are two separate things. One is the prohibition of having najasa on me. The other thing is praying. And they may coincide or they may not coincide. And so given that it's haram to have najasa on you in the prayer and outside the prayer, therefore having najasa on you does not affect the validity of the prayer. Right? That's the argument, right? And so the Malikis and the Shafis, we have that same system, right? We think in that same way. So it's the same argument, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
خير. وهل يجوز اتخاذه فيه وجهان. So the question here then is use. يحرم استعماله في الطهارة وغيره or وغيرها. Okay, understood. استعمال is one thing. What about اتخاذ? Right, you gave it to me. I want to buy a gold container. I want to buy a gold spoon. Right? Or the same thing. I can't use a guitar, but can I buy a guitar? Right? So can I do that? فيه وجهان, the two positions. Why? And so we say yes, سدا للذرائع. No, we don't believe in سد الذرائع in the school. Right? So سد الذرائع as an أصل من أصول الفقه doesn't exist in the Shafi school. That's not a thing. right? We don't have sadd al-dhara'i blocking the means. So could I have a golden spoon and not use it? Yeah. So I have a golden tool that can only be used for something that's haram. Right? Am I allowed to own it? Am I allowed to buy it? So yeah, because just don't use it. Or no, because it's because sadd al-dhara'i blocking the means. So in reality, though, the Shafi'is in principle do not use sadd al-dhara'i. In practice, we use it all the time. It is just that the other schools use it even more, right? They use it even more. But in principle, like we will see many scenarios in the Shafi school where it's just min bab sadd al-dhara'i. You can't do that because this may well, not it does, it may well lead to something. So it's actually, so that's quite an important concept, right? The difference between how we are usulan and practically, there's a big difference there, right? In principle, does the Shafi school change with makan and zaman? No. Does it in reality? 100%. Right? Look at the mas'ala of, for example, hijab al-jariyah, right? Does the jariyah, the female slave, does she have to wear hijab or not? Is niqab obligatory or not? You see the discussions in the school 100% based on what's happening in society, right? But they don't say that. That's not how they work, right? But that's what's happening, right? A Shafi'i mufti is not going to be somebody who's ignorant of what's happening financially and culturally and everything. That's just not how you work as a mufti. Okay. ومتخذ من بلور وياقوت ففيه قولان أظهرهما أنه لا يحرم, right? So if we say it's israf, then that's haram. You have a I don't know if you can even have a diamond cup. Imagine having a diamond cup, right? So there's an orphan on the street saying, "Please give me some water," right? And you're like, "Oh, inshallah tomorrow," and then you take a sip from your diamond cup in front of him, right? So I don't know how much it would be worth, a diamond cup, right? A diamond glass. It's not made of glass, but right. So things like that. So if we say it's israf, then yes, it would be haram. But if we say it is so khoyala, not israf, they call it khoyala, sure, right? But if we say it is so as to not break the hearts of the poor, which is the relied upon position, then it is halal, but makruh, right? So you have a platinum teaspoon, right? I don't know how much that would cost, right? A platinum teaspoon, right? So, but the poor look at platinum, they don't know what it is, so their hearts are not broken, right? As opposed to they see that, bro, I'm trying to get some money and you are eating with money. You're using gold and silver to eat with, as a tool, right? من بلور أو ياقوت ففيه قولان أظهرهما أنه لا يحرم, right? But it is makruh though. وما ضبب, so let's stop here inshallah and let's go on to inshallah next week. So as we can see, we're going to be going fast. Inshallah next week we'll be go a bit fast. Inshallah, we want to get through these things, and there are masail here that are difficult, but most of this stuff is the bread and butter that many of us have already seen in basic books of fiqh. Khair.